For years now, I've passionately disliked the MCU take on Spider-Man. I didn't like Homecoming. I didn't think it was the worst thing ever. I didn't think it was awful. I just didn't think it was a great movie. Far From Home, I couldn't stand it. I thought it was terrible. I couldn't fathom how bad that movie was. As an adaptation of Spider-Man, I had several disagreements with the take on him. And as actual movies, taking that out of the equation, I just didn't think they were very well written. They were very bland superhero movies without a lot of visual style, had very poor filmmaking, and some pretty terrible writing in my opinion. So believe me when I say that I didn't think in a million years I had a chance at liking this movie. I thought from the very beginning I was going to hate this movie. When the marketing came out, I thought I was going to hate it. When it was confirmed that Alfred Molina was going to be in it, I thought I was going to despise it. I was worried that they were going to ruin his arc, and they were going to contradict his arc and what it meant for the character. I was worried they'd tamper with what happened to him and just mess up his arc, screw it up completely. I thought for sure I would hate this movie. I mean, the legs they had to stand on were terrible. Far From Home's ending made absolutely no sense. The fact anyone believes Mysterio makes absolutely no sense. It can be so easily proven that Peter is innocent. I thought for sure this movie was screwed. It had no chance of being good. Well, we're here. The movie's finally out, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all, actually. I loved it. Yes, MCU SpiderMan fans, rejoice. I'm saying I really liked this movie. Now, for those of you who are wondering, am I going to get into spoilers here, and who are concerned and maybe trying to be careful of what you watch, most of this video is going to have spoilers, but for now, I'm going to have a brief non-spoiler section, non-spoiler review, just talk about my general thoughts of the movie, give a brief little review, then when I'm done, I'll get to spoilers, because there's a lot to talk about. That's the reason why I didn't have a spoiler warning in the beginning. Normally I would, but I don't need to, because I'm going to have a brief little section of non-spoilers. You'll know when I get to spoilers, so let's just get started talking about the movie. Overall, the visuals in this movie are far stronger than they were in the first two. One of the biggest issues I had with the first two movies is that the effects at times were awful. In Far From Home, they improved, specifically during the illusion scene, but we still had moments, for instance, when Peter was tapping the mirror, that were very fake and cartoonish. I get the illusion scene is impossible to do practically, at least completely. Like, you can't do shots like this practically. However, shots like Peter touching a mirror, you can do that practically, believe it or not. And that's CGI, but all he's doing is touching a mirror, and it looks very fake. I'd probably forgive it if it at least looked really good, but it didn't. The CG here looks very off-putting. In this movie, something must have happened because I feel like the filmmaking actually had some visual style for once. I don't know if Jon Watts finally found his footing and got more comfortable, or maybe something happened where he was allowed to be more stylistic. Either way, the movie had actual visual style and some actual flair. We got really nice camera moves, and while there's some questionable choices in terms of camera moves, overall, it was very stylized, and it felt like a Jon Watts movie. That being said, even though we got better cinematography and better directing and some better visuals, the actual effects are not so good. Don't get me wrong, there's some great ones at times, but a lot of times there's also some very cartoonish ones. Now, I don't want to say too much, but it's not a spoiler to say that Green Goblin's in the movie, because he's in the movie. You saw him in the trailers. Like, yes, he's done interviews now. It's basically confirmed. I don't consider that a spoiler. That being said, I'm still not going to talk too much about him, but what I will say is the Green Goblin mask is CGI in every single scene that it's in this movie. And it's very, very off-putting. There's a certain scene, in fact, the last scene that we see the mask in is where it looks the fakest. Spider-Man frequently looks like a cartoon, and Lizard, to his credit, looks pretty good. It's not a spoiler to say he's in the movie either. He was literally in the second trailer. So yeah, Lizard looks pretty good at times, and at other times he doesn't look so good. Sandman probably has the best CGI. This is a film that, to me, needed to be delayed by at least 8 months. I'm not saying this because I hated the movie. As you know, I love the movie. But the effects tell me that the VFX artists weren't done working on it, and the movie needed to be delayed. I'm saying this for the sake of the movie, by the way. I loved this movie. I really did. But if it was delayed by a number of months, the effects would have looked better. Look, this was a very COVIDly shot movie, and you can tell. Certain actors aren't in the same scenes with others. There was clearly some restrictions, and I understand that. And it also shows, and it's unfortunate how much it shows. Again, I love the movie. I really do. And the visuals are better. It's just that the effects at times are very cartoony, and I think if they took an extra number of months, it would have looked better. It wouldn't be so cartoony. Jamie Foxx's Electro was overall an improvement over the Amazing Spider-Man 2 version of him. I actually like Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but I think he was better here. Oh, but if you're excited over this redesign, I think you're going to be a little disappointed because it wasn't really that big of a deal in the movie. It's there for like a few seconds and it pops up twice. It's not really a mask that he uses throughout most of the fight. It just kind of shows up for a little bit. It really isn't that big of a deal. Doc Ock I was worried about, as you all know. Overall, I think he was done fine here. They barely made it work. I don't think they ruined his arc. I think they barely made it work. It was fine. They didn't ruin him like I thought they would. They overall made it work. Green Goblin is great as always. Willem Dafoe is such a great actor. I really love that he did the stunts himself. I really respect that.
Do this physical stuff was important to me. In fact, one of the first things I said to John and Amy, basically when they pitched it to me before there was even a script, was, listen, I don't want to just pop in there as a cameo or just fill in close-ups. I want to do the action because that's fun for me. And also, it's really impossible to add any integrity or any fun to the character if you don't participate in these things, because all that action stuff informs your relationship to the characters and the story, and also allows you, it makes you earn your right to play the character in a funny way.
You gotta respect this dude, man. I mean, what a god. There's a reason he played Jesus. Anyways, I found Dafoe's performance really good here, and I actually thought he was better here than he was in 2002. And he was really good in 2002, but he's just better here, somehow. I didn't think it was possible, but I guess it is. He's for sure one of the best MCU villains, and honestly, the best villain of the Spider-Man franchise. Tom Holland's Spider-Man was actually really good here. His performance was excellent, and he has a wonderful character arc. That's all I can say about that, because most of what I have to say about his character are spoilers, so... Marissa Tomei as Aunt May finally had some character. Wow, it took them so long. It took them like 5 years to do this. But geez, they finally did it. I'm not saying she's a super complex character or the best Aunt May ever, but here she had at least some character, and I appreciated that. MJ is fine. She still doesn't have a lot of character. Zendaya plays her very, very well. Actually, she gives a fantastic performance in this movie. But from a writing perspective, her only character traits are basically dark, edgy, weird girl, and Peter's girlfriend. In this movie, it's basically just Peter's girlfriend. In the previous two, it was just kind of both. Either way, she doesn't have a lot of character. The movie doesn't explore anything about her background. And I didn't expect it to. It's not really this movie's fault. It's Far From Homes and Homecomings. Those two movies refuse to give her any character. And here, it's a 2-hour and 20-minute movie. They don't exactly have time to give her character. Oh, and Ned Leeds is just insufferable. I can't stand him. He's so cartoonishly stupid, so fascinatingly unfunny, and I can't stand him. I'm gonna give this movie a 93%. Which, for those of you who don't know how letter grades work and percentages work, that translates to an A-. Alright, so now you move on to spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, leave now, or just keep watching and listening at your own risk. Now, normally I don't cover new releases because my format doesn't allow me to do that. Basically, I don't have footage of the movie, and this is obviously one of those movies where you kind of need the footage to talk about it, or at least it'd be helpful. So one day down the line, I'll probably do a deep dive where I'll use the footage when it's accessible. But right now, obviously, I can't use footage of Toby and Andrew and Charlie Cox and all the other amazing surprises. So here's what I'm going to do for now. I'm going to play some trailer footage every now and then. I'm going to use some of the footage from the previous movies at times. But for a lot of it, it's just going to be me playing Spider-Man PS4 because I find that to be easier. Also, quick disclaimer, this isn't going to be like most of my videos. Most of my videos are organized. It's just my organized thoughts going through and through, topic by topic. This is nothing like that. This is going to be my very messy, raw thoughts because it's literally been a day since I've seen the movie, and I just need to get some of this off my chest. So Charlie Cox, Matt Murdock's in the movie. He's Peter's lawyer. That was awesome. For years now, I've been very scared to see Matt Murdock cross paths with people like Spider-Man, Tony Stark, all the MCU characters, just because I was convinced if he ever appeared in an MCU movie, they would ruin him by making him a joke machine. This time around, they did not do that, and I am so grateful for that. In this movie, it's as if he never left. He's the exact same way he did at the end of Daredevil Season 3, which I am just so thankful for. His character here is exactly how he is in Daredevil, which I just appreciated so much because in Daredevil, he was not this joke machine. While he made jokes every now and then, it was very gritty, and he was much more serious. He was, a very layered character, and he wasn't, quippy. And here, they kept that, and they honored that, which I am so thankful for. They didn't character assassinate him. They kept him perfectly. Matt Murdock is, to this day, I think, one of the best written Marvel characters and the best written MCU character. They actually used him to fix a problem I have with the end of Far From Home. The ending of Far From Home, I think, is just terrible, and I still think that even after this movie. The idea that Mysterio has any point here is ridiculous. See, the way they frame Spider-Man is very flimsy because it makes absolutely no sense that anyone would believe him. For one thing, one quick Google search and you can easily find out that Quentin Beck worked for Stark Industries and was fired. For another thing, the drones are webbed up. Flash caught it on a live stream where the drones were decloaking, and you saw the monsters along with Mysterio decloaked, turning into drones. Meaning you saw Mysterio as a projection. It can be proven Mysterio's a fraud through the simple fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. knows he was a fraud. Surely Fury would try to make it so that they helped Peter at least a little bit. Plus, there are hundreds of eyewitnesses, some of which were the kids who don't like Peter in this movie, by the way, who saw Peter fight the drones and who saw the drones decloak. There are lots of witnesses that saw him fight here. I've never been fond of that, and in this movie, through the Matt Murdock scene, he actually clarifies that the charges won't stick because they don't have anything concrete, and I appreciate the fact that Matt Murdock clarifies that these charges are ridiculous, basically, and that they can't actually charge Peter with anything because they don't have enough. It does make sense that even if Mysterio is proven a fraud, either way, I think Peter would be a controversial figure, and so I like how that played into his life. I like how they treated the people as vulgar and evil as they would be. Something I really love about what happens right after this is they discuss that this doesn't just affect Peter. Peter is obviously facing difficulties because of this, but so are his friends. None of them are getting accepted into colleges, and that's very problematic. Ned and MJ, simply because they're friends with Spider-Man, aren't getting accepted. Realistically, Flash Thompson wouldn't have been accepted anywhere either, considering he wrote a book. But whatever. I still love that MJ and Ned are also facing problems and consequences for this. It made it a lot more interesting and realistic. I also like that that's part of the reason why Peter went to Doctor Strange, to ask him to fix this not just for him, but for Ned and MJ. Let's talk about Doctor Strange for a moment. I am very mixed on Doctor Strange in this movie. He wasn't character assassinated the way I thought he would be, but I'm not sure if I'd say he was or not. By wiping everyone's memories, he's not gambling the multiverse. The only reason the multiverse happened is because Peter stupidly confused the spell. So I can accept that, because obviously in the book, they wouldn't know the multiverse would happen, because I'm guessing no one's brought upon the multiverse before, because no one would interrupt a spell like that. The movie clarifies that Strange has done the spell before, like he's practiced it, and that's kind of where I'm stuck. Hearing that Strange used the spell to wipe Wong's memory for his own needs, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I am very mixed about whether or not I think that's in character for Strange to do. It's also really stupid that Strange brought Peter down there and was going to erase everyone's memory without telling him, only he tells him on the spot. Like, what? How can you not tell Peter this before doing the spell? I just thought that was very flimsy and a very lazy way to do this, and it could have been better. There was a line in the Multiverse of Madness sneak peek that said basically that Strange didn't know what he was doing and that he made a mistake. And that tells me that maybe Doctor Strange 2 will criticize him for this. And if it does, I'll probably give this a pass. So at this point, I think a lot of what I think about whether or not this is character assassination depends on Doctor Strange 2. I'm hoping it makes it work. I'm not sure. Again, I'm very mixed on whether or not I like it. After the scene where he tries to erase everyone's memories, though, I think he did a pretty good job. He was a very tough love type character, and I appreciated that. He was one person saying basically, hey, we shouldn't interfere with this. We need to send them back, no matter what. And I appreciated that aspect. I thought that part was in character, and it worked for him. So the Spider-Man versus Doctor Strange sequence was a lot of fun, both visually and from writing perspective, though I'm not sure if I believe for 1 second that Doctor Strange would actually lose against Spider-Man. I guess it's fun that he outsmarts him with geometry, but there's a few times where Doctor Strange could have beaten him. Like, why didn't he do that thing he did in Infinity War where he just tied them all up with orange ropes? Like, tons of them. If it could restrain Thanos, I think it could restrain Peter. In the first part, he's trying to talk him down and, convince him and basically explain to him why they need to do this. And I understand that. I understand he doesn't actually want to hurt Peter. But towards the end of the fight, when he's actually trying to actively continue to get the box, I think that is where he should have at least tried to use the orange ropes. Writing him out of the film by outsmarting him in the mirror dimension is kind of fun, I guess, but I'm still wondering why he didn't use all the orange ropes towards the end there. I think in the first part it's all good, but the last part I'm like, why didn't you use the orange ropes? I love that Peter is just trying to redeem all the villains. And speaking of Peter, let's talk about Tom Holland for a second. We'll get to the others shortly, don't worry, but Tom Holland was really good here. His Spider-Man was fantastic. This movie at its core is really about the consequences of being Spider-Man and having this life, which I appreciate, and Tom Holland gave a very good performance. Very convincing, very heartbreaking. The scene in the rain after Aunt May died was so good. One of my favorite Spider-Man scenes of all time. It's just so well acted by Tom Holland, and visually is so compelling. This is the first time since Civil War that I was actually invested and cared about his Peter Parker. Now, I will say, I think they kinda made the Uncle Ben thing worse. So, in this universe, I have no idea who Ben was. What if confirmed he existed, and that Peter knew him? Homecoming confirms that Aunt May's been through something terrible, probably Uncle Ben's death. And Civil War confirms that Peter was irresponsible at one point and someone paid the price for it. I'd like to think that was Uncle Ben, but at this point, I don't even know. Apparently, Uncle Ben never taught him responsibility. I don't really know. It's very confusing. Aunt May was buried alone in this movie, and not next to Uncle Ben. I don't know what the deal is with that, but they seriously need to clarify this. All they've done is confuse me. I want to make this clear. The problem isn't changing that Uncle Ben doesn't say with great power comes great responsibility. The problem is the way they've told this change. It's so confusing. I'm also still wondering what Peter's reason was for even becoming a superhero. I understand his motivation, but I don't understand the reason for his motivation. I'm still waiting for that. Homecoming never clarified that. I think it has something to do with Uncle Ben, but at this point, I don't even know anymore. They've made so many changes that they're confusing the audience. They're confusing me. I'm so confused as to who Uncle Ben was in this universe. Please, stop treating Uncle Ben like the plague, and just explain it to me, because I'm genuinely so confused. It shouldn't be this hard to make something make sense, okay? Uncle Ben isn't a complicated story. You just need to explain it to me, please. Look, changes are fine, and I think changing it to where Aunt May teaches him responsibility is perfectly fine. But you have to explain the change then. You have to explain who Uncle Ben was. Because this universe confirmed that he exists. Like, the universe confirmed that he exists, but they make it seem like Peter doesn't care. Why is that? Who was Uncle Ben? Please clarify this. I'm not saying this because I'm saying he needs to be the exact same as he always is. I'm saying this because I'm confused. These movies keep confusing me, and this one confused me even more. It shouldn't be this hard. You don't need a flashback. All you need are like 5 or 6 lines. That's literally all you need. Have Peter say he got the spider bite, then he was irresponsible, then because he was irresponsible, Uncle Ben got shot. Then ever since then, he's realized he can't be irresponsible. There. You can say Aunt May taught him great power comes great responsibility still, I don't care. Whatever the case may be, he vowed to be a superhero after Uncle Ben died. Whatever. Whatever the change is, Uncle Ben died of a disease. Whatever this is, please, at least tell me what the change is. I may not be happy about it, but at least explain it to me. It's as if these movies are afraid to just say Uncle Ben's dead. And I don't know why. I don't know why the writers, or Marvel Studios, or Sony, are so afraid to say the words Uncle Ben. But dude, it's okay to acknowledge Tom Holland had Uncle Ben. There's nothing wrong with that. No one's gonna care. Now let's just move on a bit. Green Goblin killed Aunt May, and that was great. I will say it makes absolutely no sense she's able to even walk. Like, literally, after that hit, her back should have been broken. That being said, the way she died is horrifying. Like, she died not even realizing she was dying, and that's kind of scary. It was actually really, really haunting. It gave us hope for a minute that she'd live, and then boom, she's dead. And I'm kind of glad they did that, because if they said she lived after that, I'd have just not been able to take anything seriously. Still, her death was really sad. When Happy saw her and he realized she was dead, dude, that was so sad and so good. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Happy and Aunt May relationship, but Jon Favreau's acting was so good here that I was able to sort of forgive it. I'm not sure if I believe the police would have shot him, considering he was sitting there screaming for help. He's not moving, and I'm pretty sure they wouldn't shoot him with at least moving a bit closer to see what's happening. But yeah, anyways, moving on. Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin was great. He was somehow better here than he was in the first movie, which I didn't even think was possible. I love that we got to see a bit more of Norman, like, as actually Norman trying to fight the Goblin side of himself. It was very investing. I mean, his first scene in the movie, well, technically his second, but his second scene is literally him begging the Goblin to leave him alone. Willem Dafoe played both sides very well. And the moment that it turns out Goblin's been in control the whole time, and that Goblin talks to Peter as Tom Holland for the first time, was so haunting and so good. The best thing they did was get rid of that mask. I know I said I would miss it. I lied. They made it work. I'm kind of glad the mask was gone. And literally, I kind of love that the mask is on screen for less than a minute. Literally, the first thing they do is destroy the mask, and I kind of love that. I didn't miss it. Willem Dafoe's face was enough. He was so good. I thought he was actually a lot scarier without it. The scene where Peter was punching him in the face over and over again was so haunting and so good. Willem Dafoe's just such a good actor, man. The apartment fight was just brutal. Probably the best fight of the entire, not just the movie, but in the John Watts trilogy, to be honest. It was so brutal, so well done. I just loved it. I love the homage to the comics of the shredded purple sweatshirt, so that he has the purple hood and, you know, the exposed green arms and legs. I love that. I think it was a really cool look. And the upgraded look was actually pretty cool. Not overly fond of the goggles, but other than that, it was pretty cool. I think the purple hood was just excellent. And Green Goblin's reaction after he stabbed Toby and sees everything he's done, and just seeing Norman come back after he's been cured, and where he's just, you know, like, what have I done? It was so wonderful. I love that moment. It's one of my favorite moments of the film. It was such a great moment seeing Norman come back and realizing the horrible things he did when Goblin was in control of him. Alright, now let's just talk about the only thing y'all wanted me to talk about this whole time. Toby and Andrew, they're in the movie, and they're great. Andrew Garfield is my favorite Spider-Man. Most people probably know that by now. So seeing him come back was just a dream come true. I never thought it would happen, but, you know, it happened, and I loved every second of it. But what I love about Toby and Andrew being here is that it wasn't just fan service. They legitimately developed. Andrew's a prime example of this. Andrew developed as a character. The best scene in the whole movie, in my opinion, is when the two Peters, Toby and Andrew, are comforting Tom after Aunt May's death. And they're all basically, you know, sharing the pain that they've gone through. And you can see the acting is so good from all of them. And Andrew, when he's explaining how Gwen died and how he stopped pulling his punches, was so good and so heartbreaking. Both of them were in it for longer than I thought they would be too, because I thought they would just be in the third act, No, they're in the movie for like 50 straight minutes, which was just awesome. Seeing where Andrew's character went was just so good. He is probably the darkest Spider-Man and the one that's been through the most pain. And I just love seeing where he went. Knowing that he stopped pulling his punches is heartbreaking. And I want to see that on the big screen. Sony, give me the Amazing Spider-Man 3, please. Call up Mark Webb, convince him, pay him whatever he needs to be paid, and get him to make another one. And get Andrew to come back. Please, I'm begging you. Hashtag release the Amazing Spider-Man 3. Hashtag restore the Webverse. Whatever. There are a lot of really small but great moments with Andrew, like when Toby talked about how his friend tried to kill him and he died in his arms. If you notice and look at Andrew, he's eavesdropping on them and listening, and you can see through his body language what that means to him and how he kind of relates to that. Garfield has been my favorite Spider-Man of all time for years now, and seeing him come back is just so great, man. I love that he's still witty. There's some MCU level dialogue you can argue, but I'd say that's in character for him. He's always been more sarcastic than the other two Peters. And beneath all that sarcasm, you can see that he's been through so much pain, and you can also see how much Andrew Garfield loves Spider-Man. That's something that I think's always made his portrayal special. It's just how much love he has for this character. Not that Maguire and Holland don't have any love for this character. It's just special to see how much Garfield has for this character.
You have no idea how much this means to me. I've always wanted to come here as a fan, and this is my first time, so here I am as a fan. Stan Lee says that the reason why Spidey is so popular is because all of us can relate to him, and I agree. I needed Spidey in my life when I was a kid, and he gave me hope. In every comic I read, he was living out mine and every skinny boy's fantasy of being stronger, of being free of the body I was born into, and that swinging sensation of flight. And upon receiving his power, unlike most who become corrupted, he used it for good. And I think we all wish that we had the courage to stick up for ourselves more, to stick up for a loved one more, or even a stranger you see being mistreated. And Peter Parker has inspired me to feel stronger. He made me, Andrew, braver. He reassured me that by doing the right thing, it's worth it. It's worth the struggle. It's worth the pain. It's worth even the tears, the bruises, and the blood. And I wouldn't be able to stand here in front of you guys right now without feeling that Spider-Man was here with me, with his reassuring hand on my shoulder, making sure I don't fall over and concuss myself. He has inspired countless people, girls, boys, men, women, all of us. And he has saved lives, and he saved my life. And I owe Webhead a lot, and I owe Stan the Man a lot, and I'm humbled to be here, like you do not know, to share the work that we've done with all of you. And this is my first Comic-Con, and
We all know at this point that Andrew Garfield loves the character of Spider-Man. He has a genuine, passionate love of this character, and it shows in every moment, everything he does in these movies. It shows in all 3 times he played Spider-Man. You can feel how much he loves this character and how badly he wants to do well. You can feel his passion for the character in every single moment. In this movie, it's no different. You can see how much he loves this character. He's so good in this movie. I fully expected Garfield to come back for the 3rd act, be cool, be quippy, be funny, and have that one moment where he saves MJ and it'd be great. But you know what I didn't expect? For them to give him a character arc. Yeah, Garfield had a character arc in this movie. I didn't think they'd be able to fit something like that in, but they did. This movie puts a lot of emphasis on Andrew's guilt. When he's talking to Holland in the best scene in the movie, he tells him about Gwen and how he's never going to be able to forgive himself. And Toby later on asks him if he ever was able to move on and meet someone new. And Andrew tells him no. He then follows it up with saying that he believes that in this life of heroes, you don't get the girl, you don't get the happy life. This is just who they are. He's in the same phase Matt was in season 3 of Daredevil.
Someone once told me that warriors were meant to be alone. That caring for people would make me weak.
Sounds like he needed to get laid.
Ha! That actually explains a lot. I mean, he was right, of course. I let people in, I paid a price. I won't make that mistake again.
Andrew is full of so much guilt and pain that he can't let go of Gwen's death. He can't let go of the mistake he made. He now believes that he doesn't get that life, that maybe he doesn't even deserve it. He then asks Toby if he made it work, and Toby says that while it took a while, him and MJ were able to make it work. And he follows it up by saying he hopes Andrew finds someone someday and makes it work with someone. But Andrew can't because he hasn't forgiven himself yet. He's still full of too much guilt and rage. That's why he snapped in the Amazing Spider-Man universe. Andrew snapped. He's full of too much guilt, and now he realizes that, and he's full of even more guilt. But then it's happening again. Spider-Man's love is once again falling to her death, but this time it's not Andrew's, it's Tom's. Tom goes to catch her, but Defoe's Goblin makes sure to stop him from doing that by hitting him with his glider and taking him to the final battle. Now there's no one to catch her, but no, Andrew can't see this happen again. He has to do something about it. It's his responsibility now. Remember
that if you could do good things for other people, you had a moral obligation to do those things. That's what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility.
So in the moment that we all knew was coming from the trailer, Andrew jumps down and he saves MJ. Now, one minor criticism with this scene, I wish they had slowed down MJ actually falling and Andrew going for it just a bit more to further homage and emphasize how important this moment is. But it's not that big of a deal. It's a minor complaint, and it's something that I would have done. What I would have done is I would have slowed it down just a little bit more for like 10 more seconds, and then Andrew catching her felt that much more impactful. Still, after he catches MJ, and we get what I didn't expect. We get a small moment that's slow-paced and just stops the middle of the fight, and we see Andrew's reaction, and we see what this means to his character. He's fixed his mistake. His mistake was still his mistake, but this time he did it right. Just like on the bridge scene. In Amazing Spider-Man, that movie was about his search for a father figure, and he gave Jack that father that he can never have. He gave him that moment, reuniting with his father, that he'll never have.
My son. My son. My son. Who are you? Spider-Man.
Something similar happens here. He gives Tom something that he's never gonna have again. He gives him a chance to have that love. He said earlier Gwen was his MJ, which also helps set up this moment. Andrew couldn't save his love, but he can save Tom's. What also makes this moment special is that it's the moment he completes his arc. This film put a lot of emphasis on Andrew being able to move on and forgive himself, like when Toby asked him if he ever moved on and tells him that he has hope that he will. Andrew here finally gets that. He's done this right. He's finally come to a point where maybe, just maybe, he can forgive himself and move on. He said earlier that he will never be able to forgive himself, but now he's come to a point where maybe, just maybe he can. He's watched them, he's grown with these people, and now, because he's been able to do this, he's realizing that maybe he can forgive himself now. Does that remind you of anything else?
I hurt her, Aunt May. I don't know what to do.
You start by doing the hardest thing. You forgive yourself.
Say what you will about Spider-Man 3, it definitely isn't a great film, but man, those forgiveness themes are just top-notch. Something similar has to happen here. Andrew has to forgive himself for not saving Gwen, and this finally gave us some hope. This is his moment where he can finally forgive himself for this. Andrew and Tom aren't the only good things about this movie. What about Toby? Toby was great in this movie. He doesn't have a super complex arc like Tom or Andrew do, but he doesn't need one. His journey, his story was completed 15 years ago. It's not necessary to give him a super complex arc at this point. The only thing that was necessary was an epilogue and closure to the trilogy. And that's what we got. A more mature, older Spider-Man. A veteran Spider-Man, if you will. He's a veteran Spider-Man who's seen it all, who knows what it's like to be Spider-Man, and who knows the difficulties and understands it, and has matured and basically already completed his journey. He seems exactly like he was in the trilogy, but more mature, which I appreciated. It was really cool to see him again. Knowing that he got together with MJ and that they made it work is cool. Tobey's a legend, man. He was so good in this movie. The moment he walks in, the way he waves at them, it's the same kind of nervous but dorky, lovable Peter Parker that he was 15 years ago. It's so good. The moment he's back, you feel like he's really back. I loved his chemistry with the other two characters. I loved his moments of reconnecting with his villains like Marco and Octavius. Personally, I'm a little disappointed that he never got to talk to Willem Dafoe again. Like, he literally doesn't say a word to the guy. The only interaction they have is him getting stabbed by him, and that's kind of disappointing. But if I had to guess, they probably had at least one interaction, and they probably cut it for time, because the movie's like 2 hours and a half, so I understand. I love Tobey's brief fight with Sandman, where it ends with him trying to show him empathy again and telling him that it's okay. And I especially loved his reunion with Otto. And I love that he's the Boy Scout trying to encourage the other two Spider-Man. Like when he calls Andrew amazing after he puts himself down. That stuff is so Tobey, and I love it so much. Tobey was very much in the movie to provide closure to the trilogy, which was just excellent, and to support the other two arcs and to help them, to stop Peter from killing Goblin, which was a great moment, by the way. Tom was about to do what he did to Dennis Carradine in the first movie, so now he sees Tom's getting ready to do that too. Tom has the glider in his hand. He's going to impale Dafoe with this thing, but then Tobey runs and stops him. Both Tobey and Andrew don't want him to take the paths that they did. And just that moment of Tobey stopping him and the slow camera movement of Tom stopping and Tobey having to stop him and just looking at him, basically saying with his face, no, you can't do this. Now, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that Tobey doesn't once consider that Dafoe might backstab him and sucker punch him. Like, okay, I like the stab is a great moment, but if I was in Peter's position, I'm just saying, I'd have run in there, kicked him in the face as hard as I could and stopped that glider. Or better yet, use my webs and like web his arm to the ground or something. Something along those lines. And I just would have tried to stop him at least a little bit and try to stop Peter from killing him in the process. I'm just saying, that's what I'd do. And it's kind of weird that Tobey didn't think he'd do that. Also, why didn't his spider sense go off when Goblin stabbed him? I'm just saying. Either way, Tobey getting stabbed genuinely terrified me, and I thought, are they really going to kill him off like this? I'm really glad they didn't, honestly, because I think that would have been a very unsatisfying death for this version of Peter. I'm not saying he can never die and make a sacrifice. I'm just saying I think this would have been an unsatisfying way to do it. The stab did its job in scaring me, and I think Peter's reaction to it, just saying he's been stabbed before, while it was maybe a bit much, was kind of funny because he has been stabbed before, and, I mean, you have to imagine, he's been Spider-Man for like around 20 years now, so he probably has been stabbed a bunch of times and stuff like that. I think it's important to remember that Tobey kept his empathy. Like, he wanted to cure the Goblin, and literally everyone, even after all Norman did to him. Norman, in his world, died selfish. He died as the Goblin. But here, I love that Tobey is trying to make it so that Norman dies selfless, or at least becomes selfless, so that Norman can be Norman again. And I like that he says he's been thinking about it for a while. It's just an awesome implication. It shows you just how much empathy Tobey really has. Oh, and the final battle in general in this movie is just cinema. I have one complaint with it, and the only complaint I have is Andrew didn't cure a single villain. Tobey cured one, Tom cured two, and one of them should have been Andrew's, I think. He cured Lizard, and while yes, like it's fine, it's not a plot hole necessarily, he cured Lizard, and he has that moment with him, but that was Andrew's villain, and honestly, this moment has no emotional resonance because Tom Holland has no connection to this Lizard. He talked to the dude like once. Him curing Dafoe was actually satisfying because he has a history with this Green Goblin. Green Goblin killed his aunt. Him beating Goblin is satisfying because of that. The final battle with Dafoe works because of that. Here, him curing Lizard, that has no real emotional resonance, and if it was Andrew who cured Lizard, I think that would have had a lot more resonance than just Tom doing it. And I think it's really dumb that Tom did it, Just let Andrew cure his villain, man. I'm still in disbelief that we actually got a live-action Spider-Verse with Tobey, Andrew, and Tom fighting the Sinister Five? Actually, I guess it was 4 since Aqua's in here. Alright, I need to wrap this up because we're like past 40 minutes. I adore the ending. It is so good. The classic Spider-Man suit returned. Everyone who forgot who Peter was. It was so good. Please don't give him any more suits. Let him go an entire trilogy with that beautiful classic suit. He deserves it. The final swing has become one of my favorites. I absolutely adored it. The ending with everyone forgetting Peter was just so perfect, so tragic, so sad, but so good. And I swear, if they retcon it and like at the end of the 4th movie or the 5th movie or the 6th movie, they remember him again, like MJ remembers him again, I'm going to lose it, and I'm going to be very upset because I think that would just completely undo the impact and importance of this movie. Let Peter's friends never remember. This movie really meant a lot to me personally. Seeing my favorite Spider-Man ever, Andrew Garfield, come back is something I've always wanted, but something I never thought could ever happen. And just seeing it happen was just so amazing and just hit me so hard, man. Like, you have no idea. I loved it so much. Seeing both him and Tobey come back was just amazing. I'm so happy that I can finally come out and say that I actually really liked an MCU Spider-Man movie because this hasn't happened yet. I just love what this movie did with his characters. Yes, it has some problems, some of which I didn't even talk about because, you know, time. But still, to wrap everything up, seeing Tom Holland finally become a Spider-Man that I can actually really like was amazing. I love where his character's going. I'm very excited to see another one. And seeing Tobey come back and provide us some very nice closure on this trilogy, and seeing Garfield come back and give us at least some closure, and seeing him actually reconnect with Electro and try to redeem him was just amazing, and it meant so much to me. I adored it. This is not only the best Spider-Man film I've seen in years, but the best MCU film I've seen in years. I do, however, want to quickly complain one more time by saying Avi Arad got a special thank you at the end of this movie, which is hilarious, by the way. But Mark Webb and Sam Raimi didn't. They created these characters. How do you not give them a special thank you? I mean, crap, give John Watts a special thank you, honestly. I'm pretty sure he pitched the movie. So, like, give all 3 of them special thank yous. Honestly, I'm down for that. I know it's not, like, something that affects the film's quality, but I think it's a huge cardinal sin that Mark Webb and Sam Raimi didn't get thanked for creating these characters that they used. That's just an absolute cardinal sin, and I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive this film for doing it. I mean, you can give a special thank you to Avi Arad, even if he obviously wrote it himself, but, like, give special thanks to Mark Webb and Sam Raimi too, man. Like, come on. Anyways, I need to wrap things up. I love this movie. I thought it was great. Not fantastic or perfect. It had, you know, some problems. But I think John Watts did an excellent job. And if he comes back for the next movie, dude, I'm fine with that. I'm down. I'm so glad he got to direct the Spider-Verse movie because I think he just did fantastic with it. He really understood how to use the fan service and how to make the fan service satisfying. And that's what I love about the fan service of this movie. It wasn't just fan service. It was fan service that fit the story they were telling. I think this movie, at the end of the day, is just a beautiful love letter to all 3 Spider-Man franchises, and it works very well as that. I absolutely adored it. It isn't perfect. It has problems, like I said before. Again, some of which I didn't even really talk about, but still, I just absolutely loved it. The film works so much better than I could have thought. It's such a beautiful, wonderful, passionate love letter to the fans of Spider-Man and to these franchises. It respects these characters, and I love it for it. So since this movie didn't do it, I will. Thank you, Sam Raimi, Mark Webb, for making these wonderful characters. And thanks, John Watts. Thank you for making this wonderful movie and bringing these characters back to life. And for making this wonderful, beautiful love letter to the Spider-Man franchise and to the fans.